Welcome to NCIX Tech Tips. Today we have Dave Burks, who is a Director of Product Marketing for Seagate Technology. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Linus.
And we are going to be talking about a few different things, including the Barracuda XT drive. We're also going to be talking about general trends with the hard drive space. We're going to be talking about, oh, this is interesting. We're going to be talking about, oh, where'd it go? I have, 2 dimes in my pocket, 20 cents. We're going to be talking about the significance of 20 cents and finally the future trends of desktop hard drives in terms of density, reliability, and cost. So why don't we get started with you telling me a little bit about the power of one.
Okay, the power of one is sort of the slogan we're using in relation to our new product launch for our new Barracuda product family. Barracuda has been around for years and everybody seems to be familiar with it. But what we're doing is we're introducing our first 1 terabyte per disk capacity drive. And so that's a pretty big milestone in the industry. And it basically means that we're able to cram a whole terabyte of data onto one platter, 2 heads of a 3.5-inch hard drive. And so that's kind of where the power of one comes in. But the secondary message around the power of one is we're doing 2 different things with our desktop product category. We're consolidating a little bit. Currently consists of a Barracuda Green drive, a Barracuda drive, and a Barracuda XT.
Right.
And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to phase out our Barracuda Green drive, and we can. That's where the 2 dimes comes in. We can talk about that, and then our Barracuda XT drive is actually no firm date to announce, but our Barracuda XT drive is going to migrate to be the home of solid-state hybrid technology in the desktop eventually.
So you guys are consolidating hard drives down to 1 SKU. Essentially,
1 traditional rotating hard drive SKU, Barracuda, for the desktop.
Right.
Notebook is different, and then and then the Barracuda XD high performance is going to be
different product
solid state hybrid eventually.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that consolidation of the product lineup, and this is where the 2 dimes comes in. And tell me a little bit. I think we have a slide about this. I'm just going to kind of there it is. Tell me about the 2 dime story and why we're getting rid of, is it 5400 or 5900 RPM?
Ours is 5900
5900 RPM drives. 2 dimes, 20 cents. Okay.
Okay. Well, let me show you where 20 cents comes in. This little equation up here is an equation that I've done that basically shows you how much it costs to run a typical desktop computer at different RPM speeds in electricity. And so 2400 is the average number of hours your computer is on the desktop. That's what the industry figures. And the 5.4 is the average power in watts of a green drive, or a 5400 to 5900 RPM drive. You multiply by that, or divide by 1,000 to get kilowatts, and then you multiply that by how much your electricity charges you for a kilowatt hour. Anyway, that complicated equation. $1.70 is what it costs you for a green drive. $1.90 for a 7200 RPM drive. So I'm sorry to dispel the myth here, folks, but you only save about 20 cents a year in your typical green drive.
But Dave, my green drive was cheaper in the first place.
Well, it may be cheaper, but there's no real reason for it to be cheaper.
Okay, so what you're saying then is that it costs the same or similar to produce a 7200 RPM drive as a 5900 RPM drive.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. I mean, there's really no same number of components. They're the same overhead in manufacturing and stuff. And as a matter of fact, it actually takes us longer to test a slower drive to actually certify all the data on there.
Right.
But so yeah, it's really a positioning thing more than a cost of goods perspective.
Well, I can tell you from the retailer side of things, that's where I come from, obviously, that it's beneficial to have fewer SKUs because it's less overhead for us. So that's going to help us deliver better price points. And if every customer now gets 7200 RPM performance for the same price, regardless of anything else, then I see this as a major win.
And that's our message. If you don't mind, I want to just show you this slide, which is people often ask, can you really get more performance out of 7200 RPM?
The answer is yes, but you can go ahead and keep talking.
Well, the answer is yes. I mean, I wish I could say that this was as fast as our hybrid drives, and they're not. But you do get faster performance because it's all about getting data into that CPU. And so if you take 2 similarly, spec'd hard drives in same areal density and heads and so on, then a 5400 RPM drive essentially runs about 30% slower. And so I think on this slide here, this gives you some sense about what you're giving up
Right.
to get that 20 cents is you're giving up performance, which could lead to productivity. And I've just got a slide here that says if you have a worker that's making $20 an hour, they don't have to save much time to get that money back far in excess of
that
the
20 cents.
Yeah, so that's our story there.
Okay, and I would suggest, given my experience in real-world usage, that a 7,200 RPM drive performs significantly better than 33% faster than a 5,400 RPM drive. Because remember, Dave here is talking brand new numbers. I'm talking, crudded down OS with Yahoo toolbar this and, 8 different instant messaging clients that. When it gets bogged down far more, there's a deep queue of instructions to be read from the drive.
Right.
So with that head moving around and that disk spinning slower, I would suggest that the 7,200 RPM is significantly faster.
Well, and let me just tell you, the hard drive technology is getting harder to do, and you're
Okay.
going to see a period where the prices are not going to be coming down as historically they have, and that's all the more reason why 7,200 is just cheap performance.
So here's something then, because in recent history, we've seen a few different improvements that have given us significantly more capacity. So one of them is perpendicular recording.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys were all about that when it first happened. I believe you were the first with a perpendicular drive.
I think we were right in there. Yeah, I remember we were
so.
sure talking about it a lot.
And you had there's a great little song, I believe, about perpendicular recording. So you guys should check that out. Just Google it
I'm
somewhere.
gonna look for that.
Yeah, go ahead and look for that. It's pretty neat. So perpendicular recording allowed us, instead of writing the data longitudinally on the drive, we're able to take that and flip it. So we get more density that way. Okay, now 4K sectors, which really were overdue, allowed us to reduce the overhead on the drive. But what are we able to achieve in terms of actual physical implementation on the disk to make drives more dense and, I guess, stay as reliable or more reliable?
Well, in this generation of our product, we've actually squeezed the tracks a lot closer together.
So about
40% closer, and now we're actually achieving track densities of 340,000 tracks per inch. And just to give you some perspective about how dense that is, if you're to measure those tracks, they'd be about 75 nanometers. And I picked up this little analogy, it's kind of gross, but it's actually smaller than a flu virus that you don't want to breathe in during flu season. And to give you a little more perspective, spinning at 7,200 RPMs, that head that's tracking is experiencing 85 mile-an-hour winds.
Okay.
And so that's hurricane force winds, and we're trying to track at that. So the technology that we've implemented to help us improve, we've actually improved our tracking, we call AccuTrack. It's actually micro actuation. Micro actuation is where we've put 2 little piezoelectric actuators at the very end of the swing arm out near the head that allows that head to adjust to about 7 nanometers of accuracy. And that is, the scale here is really amazing, but that technology is essentially stuff that's been used in the enterprise called micro actuation. And what we've done is we've miniaturized it, cost reduced it, and made it so that we could deploy it on the consumer level of our products and get just fantastic performance out of it.
And that's nano actuation.
Nano actuation.
Nano actuation. Okay, so basically what you're trying to tell me then is that we're going to be looking at an enterprise technology here that's going to give us better data density and more reliability at the same time.
Yeah, and it's also going to bring costs down a little bit too, because cost per gigabyte is coming down, and
right.
So.
And I guess this comes down to that power of one thing, because ultimately, if you guys don't have a different technology for desktop and enterprise, you're only doing the R&D once. You might as well.
Well, we still have enterprise drives because there's additional functionality that the enterprise needs that is still more expensive. But we are taking some very sophisticated technology and we're deploying it in a platform that will ship hundreds of millions on at some price points less than $100. So I think that's a pretty amazing story.
So speaking of price points, storage keeps getting cheaper and cheaper. You alluded to that we might not see. We've always seen densities going like this.
Mm-hmm.
And costs going like this, sort of at the same time.
Yeah.
Have we reached the point where we're at the limit of, whether we can scale capacity like that?
Yeah.
And is there a limit to how much storage we need? Is it okay?
Well, you know, we're not quite at the limit, but it's definitely slowing down. Squeezing the bits closer together and the tracks closer together is getting really, really tough. Some of the technology that's being looked at is actually taking the performance in a different direction. One of them that comes to mind is called shingled magnetic recording, where in order to get the tracks closer together, you actually overlay the tracks
Oh, wow.
like a shingle.
Okay.
Problem is that when you rewrite your data, you have to rewrite tracks, and so that's going to be challenging in terms of how to implement that.
So that'd be great for reads.
It'd be great for reads.
So potentially something like, wait, no.
Like a write once implementation would be
Right,
fantastic.
okay.
Or a situation where you could delay your writes or you know, cache them or something like that.
Right.
Cloud storage could certainly take advantage of this. But yeah, you got to wonder whether or not 4 terabytes in the desktop is enough. And so I think that's why we're certainly kind of betting more on the performance side with, you know, going to 7200 all across the board, as well
Right.
as, you know, implementing more hybrid technology, because we think that's where consumers are really going to be focusing more, is to get more bang for their buck out of their systems.
So I'm going to wander away and get a prop, and I'm going to leave you here on your own talking about hybrid drives on the desktop, particularly the Barracuda XT. So tell me whatever you can about it. I'm just going to grab it.
Well, the Barracuda XT drive, again, we don't have a time frame to announce yet, but it's going to be the first product that's going to be shipping in the desktop form factor, 3.5-inch form factor. So today we ship the Momentus XT hybrid drive in the 2.5-inch form factor,
Right.
but the especially the channel environment is such a vibrant environment for performance and for those types of things to be latched onto. We're really excited about that potential.
Okay, awesome. So is the Barracuda XT going to perform significantly better than the Momentus XT? Is that the plan?
Well, it'll probably be an iteration of performance improvement,
Okay.
because it's going to take some new things that we've got slated for the hybrid technology, and it'll go a little bit beyond the previous generation drive. It'll definitely have a little bit better cost per gigabyte performance because of the form factor in and of itself. 3.5-inch drives have always had that advantage over 2.5-inch drives.
Right.
So it'll be an iterative improvement in terms of cost per gigabyte, an iterative improvement in terms of performance, and it'll be that form factor that we, you know, as I mentioned before, is very, very popular and sells a lot of drives in the channel environment.
Speaking of that form factor, this was just along the lines of the is 4 terabytes in a single drive enough? And I would suggest that for most home users, we're getting pretty close. This is, I think this is only about $150 to $200, and this is an 8-bay storage enclosure that basically sits next to your tower, so you could literally put 32 terabytes in here without any kind of special configuration.
Your own personal cloud right there.
And there you go. So I guess we're probably getting close. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention in terms of desktop drive trends or Barracuda XT?
I think we captured it.
I think we did. All right. Well, thank you very much. And
Appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you being here.